Today we are going to study the concept of point mass object. Okay, so in this we are going to study few things. First thing will be its definition. Second, we'll see the examples, and third, we'll see why it is required. So these three things we will see in this particular point mass object concept. Okay, so we'll start the today's lecture, and one by one I'll explain you. Now this concept is from the चैप्टर मोशन इन ए स्ट्रेट लाइन. ठीक है, इस चैप्टर से लिया गया कॉन्सेप्ट है मोशन इन ए स्ट्रेट लाइन. तो इसमें हम लोग सीखेंगे पॉइंट मास कॉन्सेप्ट के बारे में. ठीक है, फिजिक्स का चैप्टर है ये, कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ पॉइंट मास ऑब्जेक्ट. तो हम लोग पहले इसका डेफिनेशन देखते हैं कि पॉइंट मास ऑब्जेक्ट किसको बोलते हैं. तो व्हेन डिस्टेंस कवर्ड बाय an object is much greater than its own size in a given time, in a given time, then this object is regarded as the point mass object. This is the simple definition. This distance covered is much greater. Okay. Then the object is regarded as a point mass object. See, once again I'll say the distance covered by an object, when the distance covered by an object is much greater than its own size in a given time, then that object is regarded as a point mass object. Now we'll see the two cases. We'll see the example. I am taking a car. See, here in this definition, distance is involved. So the situation, there will be two situations. क्या सिचुएशन रहेगी? पहली सिचुएशन में क्या रहेगा कि दिस कार इज ट्रेवलिंग फ्यू 100 किलोमीटर्स. ठीक है, फ्यू 100 किलोमीटर्स. तो जब ये फ्यू 100 किलोमीटर्स डिस्टेंस ट्रेवल कर रही है कार, तो दिस डिस्टेंस कवर्ड बाय द कार, ट्रेवल्ड बाय द कार इज मच ग्रेटर देन इट्स ओन साइज, देन दिस कार विल बी कंसिडर्ड एज ए पॉइंट ऑब्जेक्ट. तो इस केस में इसको हम लोग पॉइंट मास ऑब्जेक्ट बोलेंगे. पॉइंट मास ऑब्जेक्ट will be considered as a point mass object, this car. In the second situation, when this same car is traveling few kilometers, जैसे few kilometers हो गया, then the distance covered by the car is not much greater than its own size in a given time. So इसको हम लोग point mass object consider नहीं करेंगे. It will not be considered as the point mass object. ठीक है? So this is one example. Second example I am taking is the train. एग्जाम्पल ऑफ ए ट्रेन. ठीक है, तो ये ट्रेन के केस में भी सेम है. इफ दिस ट्रेन इज ट्रेवलिंग ए डिस्टेंस फ्यू थाउजेंड्स किलोमीटर, then this train will be considered as a point mass object. The same train, if it is traveling only few kilometers, then it will not be considered as a point mass object. Another example is of Earth, which is when we are studying the motion of the Earth around the Sun. In that case, Earth is considered as a point mass object because its dia is much less than its the distance traveled by the Earth. That means its size, the dia of the Earth is much less than the distance which is it is covering around the Sun. So Earth is considered as a point mass object. So we have seen the three examples. First is car, second is train, and third is Earth. So now we'll see another things. What are the things we consider in the point mass object? So we consider its mass. Point mass object में हम लोग उसका mass देखते हैं. What we don't consider is size. We ignore size, shape and its dimension. इसको इग्नोर कर देते हैं. ठीक है, इसको हम लोग इग्नोर कर देते हैं. इग्नोर. What else we ignore? We ignore its vibrational motion and oscillatory motion. So once we ignore size, shape, dimension, vibrational motion, oscillatory motion, then when we study about the linear motion of the object, any object, linear motion or circular motion of any object, when we study about these motions of any object, that time it becomes simple to study the motion of the object because we are considering it as a point mass object. उस समय हमको आसानी से हम लोग लीनियर मोशन और सर्कुलर मोशन को समझ पाते हैं क्योंकि हमने ऑब्जेक्ट को पॉइंट मास ऑब्जेक्ट कंसीडर कर रखा है एंड वी हैव इग्नोर्ड इट्स साइज, शेप, डायमेंशन, वाइब्रेशनल मोशन एंड ऑसिलेटरी मोशन. सो हम लोग इसको बोल सकते हैं कि बेसिकली दिस पॉइंट मास ऑब्जेक्ट कॉन्सेप्ट इज बेसिकली a मैथमेटिकल कॉन्सेप्ट. रियलिटी में देयर इज नो पॉइंट मास ऑब्जेक्ट. मैथमेटिकल कॉन्सेप्ट to simplify the problem in physics. तो अभी हमने क्या क्या सीखा? हमने सीखा डेफिनेशन ऑफ पॉइंट मास ऑब्जेक्ट कि when distance covered by an object is much greater in its own size in a given time, then that object is considered as the point mass object. Then we have seen the examples कि कब कंसिडर करेंगे. फॉर एग्जांपल कार, ट्रेन एंड अर्थ, इन तीनों का एग्जांपल लिया. देन वी हैव सीन द थिंग्स व्हिच वी आर इग्नोरिंग हियर लाइक साइज, शेप, वाइब्रेशनल मोशन एंड ऑसिलेटरी मोशन. और ये भी हमने समझा कि एक मैथमेटिकल कॉन्सेप्ट है जो कि टू सिंप्लीफाई द प्रॉब्लम्स इन फिजिक्स. इसके लिए एक हमने मैथमेटिकल कॉन्सेप्ट पॉइंट मास कॉन्सेप्ट को बना रखा है. ठीक है, जिससे कि हमारा जो प्रॉब्लम्स है फिजिक्स में उसको सिंप्लीफाई किया जैसे कि व्हाइल लर्निंग द लीनियर मोशन, सर्कुलर मोशन ऑफ एनी ऑब्जेक्ट. So with this we are proceeding further. Here I'll just read what I have just now told you. Same thing is written over here. When an object in motion covers a very large distance as compared to its size and dimension, then to study the motion of the object, its size and dimension can be neglected and the object can be regarded as point object. तो उसको हम लोग point object बोलेंगे. Thus an object can be considered as point object if during motion in a given time it covers distance much greater than its own size. तो उसको हम लोग point object कंसीडर करेंगे. यहाँ पर एग्जांपल कार का आ गया जो कि ऑलरेडी आई हैव गिवन यू. तो देख लेते हैं इसमें क्या है. A car traveling few hundred kilometers distance can be taken as point object, but if a car is traveling a distance which is not very large, ठीक है, not very large as compared to the size of the car, okay, then the car cannot be taken as the point object. Now it is very clear why it is not a point object and why it is a point object. There are two situations and both situations are depending on the distance traveled by the car. Okay. Now we have come to the part where it is written that it is important to note that the point object is the mathematical concept. This I have already explained you to simplify the problem. So with this we have learned today about the point mass object. Its definition we have learned. We have seen its examples. क्या examples है point mass object के और point mass object की जरूरत क्या है हमको. Why it is required. Why it is necessary. And basically we have learned that point mass object is a mathematical concept. ठीक है, तो ये इन चीजों को हम लोगों ने यहाँ पे सीखा. और with this I would say goodbye to you all. Take care.